So, good evening, everyone. It is so good to see you. Look at Mike Flood. Good morning. I love it, man. It's good. See, the word is spreading about this stuff now. You guys don't think that it's spreading out there, but it's spreading. Look, we got Glenn from Troy. Oh my gosh, man, this is great. So, good evening, everyone. So, for those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Matthew Giff, Deputy County Executive for Oakland County. And I see lots of my team. Oh, look at the MEDC here again. I love it. We started this morning in Troy at 7:30. We had about 250 great friends and guests where we announced the results of our skills needs assessment work that we've been doing. So about a year and a half ago, well more than that, almost 2 years ago now, Brooks and I were up at Mackinac for the policy conference, and Bill Ford Jr. told us, you know, in a few years we're not going to have enough skilled tradespeople to build cars in this country. We all know that that's a significant problem going forward. In the context of what we've been talking about in our academy sessions here, you think about the importance of that, about knowing where we are at with skilled trades. Tom Johnson, look at all my good friends here. So where we're at in a certain sector of our economy. It's important to know those things. So if you're an economic developer, remember we're going to talk a little bit about where we've been, and then I'm going to hand it over to the team, and they're going to walk you through the next step of this. If your role as an economic developer, now who remembers we talked about that? Somebody remembers. Lori remembers we talked about that, right? Michelle, your role as an economic developer. Part of that role is understanding what's happening in the economic context out there, right? So this morning, we launched the results of a study in skills needs in advanced manufacturing. Because we know we have a shortage of workers in advanced manufacturing. Having an understanding as an economic developer in your community, whether you're a planning commissioner or a planner or a city council person or a township supervisor, whatever you might be, having that understanding of what the context of your economy is. So this morning, we announced the results of that. The 14 top jobs in that survey were jobs that require a significant amount of training, a significant amount of expertise. 7 of them required engineering degrees. Getting engineering degrees is no small task in this day and age. The interesting thing about the study was also that the job skills required for some of these basic advanced manufacturing. Now, when I say advanced manufacturing, I'm still talking about tool makers, tool and die guys. So I'm not talking about the high-end mechanical engineering, the building the automobile, designing it. We need those jobs too. But a lot of the jobs in your towns are basic jobs. If you have a company that comes in that wants to do CNC milling, you might look at that and say, you know, okay, that's great. But you need to know what goes into where are they going to find their workers. What's the cost of them finding their workers? What's the difficulty? Do they even have workers that can run the machines? Do you even know what CNC stands for? So you got somebody standing in front of you, and they say, yeah, we're gonna run a CNC shop. Do you even know what those letters stand for? Computer numeric control. So a lot of people don't know these basic things. So if you're going about your day and you're thinking, oh crap, I've got another planning commission meeting tonight. And you look at it at the last minute and you get there and it's some guy standing in front of you. He may be investing his last nickel to get into that space. Your job really is to be thinking about, well, what's this guy not thinking about? If we say to him, all right, listen, I want you to plant $50,000 worth of trees, what's he going to do to train his employees? And you're thinking about trees. So remember where we're from. So this isn't a critical background, but let's go real quickly where we got to this point. Of course, we want to thank all our communities. Did I go too far? So remember the context of where we were, all right? So we talked about the hole in the economy. Our job in our 61 communities in Oakland County is to think about filling the hole, right? Remember we talked about erasing what? Erase the decade. You guys remember I said that? Now, we gave you a summer break. Now, remember when you were in grade school and you had summer break, you came back to class, you all looked like you're bored and tired, and man, I got to be in class again. Well, you're in class tonight again, that's okay. So we took a little break, but remember this, we talked about erase the decade. Now, who remembers why we talked about erase the decade? Or why did we talk about erase the decade? Well, we don't want to remember those bad years, but also we need to understand the context of what we're replacing. So when you have a development project that comes into your town, you need to be thinking of it in the context of, well, wait a minute, now my town is 36% behind where it was in assessed valuation from 10 years ago. What's this thing worth to me? it shouldn't be your first thought. Remember we talked about it shouldn't be your first thought, oh man, Mary Sue lives on a corner and she's going to be a pain in the ass. Sorry, I had a glass of wine at my last event, so I'm going to try not to swear. So. But I had to have a glass of wine. I started this morning at 7:30. I know I should have brought some for everyone, right? So remember what we talked about, right? Remembering your role as an economic developer is understanding the economic context of your community. Dan Hunter stood up and talked about, gave examples of what does this project mean for you? What does the investment mean? What are you going to get out of it? How many jobs is it going to be? Is it going to be 50 jobs? If you have 50 jobs, what's that mean for your community? To try to change the dynamic of how we think about something that walks in your door. So we talked about why we worry about that. Well, because we had a decade where we lost 36% of the value of the third wealthiest county in America. That's why, and it's all of your community. So we talked about that. We talked about having an understanding of your assets. So Farmington came in. Remember how fast they talk? Man, they talked like lightning that night. But think about the context again, to bring you back up to speed. Remember, after you got back when you were in 7th grade, you had to relearn some stuff, right? So we're just thinking real quick now, relearn some stuff. So we talked about, do you know your asset, your tangible asset strengths? So I see some new faces that we've invited. Now, you've got some new faces in your midst. All of you veterans in this program are under a little bit of pressure tonight because you got some new faces. Royal Oak and Orient, Troy. These are communities that have a great interest in being part of this program. Oh, Park's here. Emily, the new economic development director's here. Not so new anymore. So think about, do you have an understanding of what your tangible assets are? Have you done that analysis? And again, we reminded you, so the MEDC is a program that gives you a deeper dive. It's the old Michigan Suburbs Alliance Redevelopment Readiness Initiative, where you talk about a deep analysis of your master plan and your documents and your ordinances. And the MEDC's got this great program that they're moving forward on. So this program is about that. This is really having an understanding of, okay, somebody's in front of me. How does it fit? What are we driving for? What are our asset base? What are the types of things that we would really like to try to sand the corners and fit in here? So having an understanding. So my good friend from Royal Oak came in the other day and says, you know, we've got this unbelievable restaurant culture in Royal Oak, but I come out of the restaurant and all my retail stores are closed. Having an understanding. What is the assets? What is the strength? So Royal Oak's got these great strengths on it. But as an economic developer, as a planning commission member, as a ZBA member, as a staff member, you have a good understanding of that. Right? So remember we talked about that, having an understanding. What is your role in economic development? Right? And we hammered on this. We had people raise hands. Gary Wall embarrassed himself. I mean, it was great. It was great. But think about it. The context of what we're talking about and being one-stop ready for development and economic preparedness on it is knowing your role as an economic developer. So who would answer the question? Remember we had the clickers on it? My role as an economic developer is to be remember we had the curmudgeon face, the guy that kind of glared across the thing. Who still says that that's who we should be is when people come into our community? If you raise your hand, you're fired, you have to no, we don't do that, right? So we talked about what is your role as an economic developer? What is your strategy? What do you have an understanding for as a group? It doesn't mean you pre-commit and do violate open meetings acts or anything like that, but when you walk into your process, if you're a staff person, right, what's your role? How inviting are you? Remember we talked about the example I went through in Orion where we had the $20 million Japanese investment, but we had the no cell phones at the counter sign, and my admin yelled at the guy, you need to take that outside, and we almost lost it, right? So what's your role on it? What context are you talking about? So we talked about all that. We talked about good news too, right? We talked about, it's not all bad. These permits are up. We talked about the context of the economy right now. So our residential construction permits are up. Mike Flood from Orient's here, and he'll tell you they've got about 800 houses. Michelle, I saw your thing, 14% growth. And you're over, it's like a GDP analysis, right? It's awesome. Lyon Township. A lot of that's based on the residential growth out in Lyon. So we know some good signs are coming along. Our construction activity is changed in dynamic. Again, your role as an economic developer, one-stop ready. Somebody walks into your community that you've never seen before. Why are they there? They could be because the space for construction of medical is outpacing the decline in the construction of commercial. Now, it's not true in Troy. All that great development's happened on 16 Mile. But you think about having a readiness of what's happening in your community. This is what this program's about, right? Mayor Tchaikovsky, is that what this program's about? That's what it's about. I'm going to get Leon to talk tonight, I promise. All right, now this was a critical slide. So remember we pulled this slide up when Alan Kerlick came to talk to us. Remember we had a session? It wasn't that long ago, a couple months. You guys all been to like Hawaii since then, but that's okay, you took vacation. And we talked about where is your spot on this chart? Your spot is what site consultants will call the entitlement process. Now, they don't mean entitlement like you're getting a welfare check. They're talking about, it's just a terminology. Entitlement, meaning you got to get the permits done. You got to get approvals. You got to get things that government does, right? So remember we pulled up this slide, and I challenged you to find where you were on that slide. And it's tough, because you're right here, underneath all the other stuff. So remember we talked about in your role in this whole concept of what you're doing to drive the prosperity of your community. Where do you fit in that puzzle? And so many of us, and I was in that boat too back on this, when I was on a ZBA a long time ago, sometimes you think that the project starts when it gets to you. And remember Al Kirillick talked about the project probably is about 18 or 24 months along by then. And then here you come. And you rip open your packet 3 minutes before the meeting starts, and you sit down thinking that that little box on that chart of all the stuff that goes into why that person's in your community suddenly becomes the whole chart in your mind. So remember we talked about where does that fit in the timeline? Where is your role in that whole process? So in the concept of where we're doing, I'm giving you the little, about 8 minutes in now, 9 minutes in, about, we've talked it for laborious time, right? Where is your spot? Where do you fit in that whole picture going forward, right? So hopefully we're remembering. Alan Kirillick came and he talked, and I saw Alan the other night, and he's so excited we're doing this program. And I told him it's not going to get you approvals any faster, Al, but yeah, I'm excited too that you're in. And so tonight's topic, right? So tonight's topic is the next phase in it. So we kind of did a little bait and switch on you because of some scheduling stuff. And we're going to talk about how you handle the pre-app process next, because we're trying to do a role, sequential, all right? What's your role? What's the economic context and your role in that whole process? And then, what does a developer think of you when he walks in? And we thought, well, now how do you run your pre-app? How do you get stuff in your door? And how do you handle that? And Auburn Hills can do that. But Pete Auger, great city manager, real dynamic economic developer, Pete's out of town. So we just switched around, so we apologize. But you got to learn everything eventually. Anyway, it's kind of like learning multiplication before division, or division before multiplication in fourth grade, or whatever you do. So tonight is implementation of best practices. So we're going to cover pre-app. So we're going to just talk to you tonight, and we've got some great people in, talk to you tonight about some of the best practices that are out there, as far as accessibility to your system, as far as project tracking. How do you even know what's happening with the project? So let me ask you a couple preemptive questions. A board member from Waterford. How do you know where a project stands? So a project comes to Waterford. You as a township board member, how do you know where it is in the process?
Me?
You.
I rely on our planning person.
You can be honest, so you don't know, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, so you don't know. Gary, now you're the supervisor in your community. You must know.
Right.
How do you know where a project is in the pipeline? Where
By working openly with the third floor, which is our community services, and the planning commission and the ZBA. If there's anything has to happen, you get involved right from the get-go, and you stay on top of it.
All right, so you get in. It's more of a conversational system. You check up on the project.
Yeah, information. Yeah.
Information guy. How about in Pontiac? Joe, what do you guys do in Pontiac? How do you track a project in Pontiac?
We meet with if it's considered to be a big project, we meet with the developer before any paperwork or any official documents are filed with the city explaining what the process is, because we're a little bit unique there for a while.
Yeah, sure.
And then once they're comfortable with what the process is, then we walk them through, find out what their deadline is, and then try and work with them with our calendars. If we need to, we'll hold a special meeting to accommodate them.
So, Lori, how about Auburn Hill? How do you guys track projects in Auburn Hill?
Same thing. I share an office with Steve Cohen, who's our director of plan and development, and I share an office with Jeff Schaff, who is a board official, and we all talk through Steve, through Pete, so everybody's aware of things. And Steve Cohen sits on the planning commission board, he's the liaison along with Sean Keenan, so everybody's well informed.
Good. So who remembers what's the most important question in the vernacular of One Stop Ready? When do they need to be open, right? We need to be in the ground, we need to open. Right? So who starts with that? I got 1 minute, that's it? Sweet. So who starts with that question when somebody walks in? Auburn Hills does. What other communities? Pontiac's doing that now. Everybody's doing it. Wixom. So starting with the question, when do you need to open? So if you're going to just start with the question, when do you need to open? And they walk in and they say, so today is September 25th, right? It feels like it should be the 27th, as long as those days did. So the 25th, and they say, we need to be open by January 1. You have to ask yourself, do you have a process in place that we can figure out how to track that to make sure it doesn't get off track? This is one stop. This isn't when someone like me calls up and you say, well, they owe us all this stuff, Matt, so they just didn't get it in. That's not a process for tracking your project. The process for tracking your project is saying, man, if they don't get that stuff to us by tomorrow, then we're going to miss the next publication deadline and they're not going to make January 1. So tracking the project is being proactive in your organization to be able to say, wait a minute, it's our responsibility to chase them down. They can always tell you, listen, we're just not ready. And then you can say, well, based on that, you want to revise the most important question. When do you want to open? Because you want to open by January 1, and we want you to open by January 1, but if you can't get us the stuff by tomorrow, then we're going to have to bump you to this date. So how often in your communities would you say, by show of hands, does it happen more than 10% of the time where somebody on your staff says, well, they just didn't get the stuff in time? If you don't raise your hand, you're lying. All right? You really are, even in Auburn Hills. Occasionally it has to happen. Occasionally it has to happen. I know. Give me one. Come on.
Never.
Never. So tonight the purpose, I'm over my time, but tonight the purpose is for us to be thinking in that mentality. What are the systems we have in place? How do people find us? They got to get a form. Is it online, or do they have to fly from Japan to pick up the form? I mean, really, that's in some of our communities. You still got to walk in and get the form, right? So if you got a company you want to bring, I'm going back to China October 9th. I'm going to meet with 20 companies. If one of those companies wants to move to Oakland County, and they say, I want to move to, I'll make up one because I won't pick on anybody, right? So I want to move to Albuquerque, Oakland County. I say, that's great. They got this great system. You're going to need to apply for a permit. You got to fly there and get your forms. And then I say, but you can go to a place like Bloomfield and they got everything online. They got the clear zoning techniques. You get everything. Why don't we get online right now while I'm with you? Who's going to win the project? Albuquerque, Oakland, or Bloomfield? Probably Bloomfield, right? So tonight we're going to talk about and introduce you to some of those best practices. Now, after we're done with the academies, we don't just get done with it. That's when we're going to come out into your staffs, into your meeting places, and we're going to talk to you about what's really in your toolbox, right? So tonight is to have a general discussion about some of these best things. Am I on track what we're doing tonight? And then we're going to come afterwards, after we've done this, and really kind of do a deeper dive into now, you know, are you really doing pre-app meetings? Do you really have the stuff online? Do you need us to get you some help there on it? So that's what tonight's about, right? So unfortunately, you guys get rid of me right now, which I'm sure is going to overjoy a lot of you. We got to do questions?
Want to do clickers?
I can do questions. Sure, Brooks can wait. Right, so I go to the next thing. Perceptions. Oh, you got to switch it.
Everyone have their clickers ready?
So for those that haven't participated in the questions, this is an interesting part of the work, right? So those who've been here before, you have to answer honestly, because we can call you out if you don't.
Like I think I mentioned at the first one, it took 1.5 years to get approval to buy this system, so I'm using it in every meeting I get. So.
All right. So which of the following best exemplifies your community's web access to applications, ordinance, policies, plans, etc.? It looks like they put a maze. They've put in an indecipherable Excel spreadsheet of some kind. URL not found, or is it the easy button? Now this is your perception of your community. Also what you think people think of your community. How accessible is all this stuff from your website? Are they answered? Only 3 people have answered? No. 30 people.
We should have, how many, 50 or so?
Should we have 50 or so? If you don't know, that's okay, just pick one. All right? This is when I'm standing in China with Jingyi Automotive, and they say, well, show me the website and how I get into that community. And I pull it up on my iPad or whatever I'm on. All right, so what do we got? That's enough. The other ones are straight. All right, so almost half of you say that it's easy. All right, so of a community that said it's easy, what's the easiest thing they can get off your website?
They can get all the permit applications, the fee schedule, the zoning ordinance, an answer to all this.
So site consultant from Atlanta, maybe thinking of Waterford, they saw a building, they can go on, they can find all that without having to call.
Right.
Another community that said it's easy, Wixom.
Personal experience of going on other people's websites.
Oh.
The best thing would be to have somebody else evaluate their website. Because we have this mentality, it's too easy for us, it's too fresh, we know right where to go. Somebody else might not think what we think is easy to
It's
do.
a good perception. We battled with that in redesigning our website too. It says, you know, well, we know where to go find it. That's good. All right, let's go to the next question. Which of the following best exemplifies your community permitting clarity and efficiency? Interesting picture. Yeah, very good. So you know, guy number one is he's in Detroit right now. He's trying to get a permit out of Detroit. So is your community like that? All right. Is it all about the quan, all about the money on it? Is your staff sleeping behind the desk on it, or is it so complex you're going to grind them up? Is that what this means?
That was supposed
No,
to be.
that's supposed
Yeah, I was
to
going to say, there's got to be a
That's
positive one in there
efficient.
somewhere.
A well-oiled machine.
Wait, I gotta have, you're right, Michelle always tells me, make sure you have something positive. All right? All right, so the fourth one is your well-oiled machine, all right? So is it confusing? Do they come in and they say, where's the money? Now, I will tell you, recently, there was a community here in Oakland County that I had to go out and say, how come this project stalled on it? And they finally admitted to me after about an hour, well, they're behind in their fees. I said, so you're holding it up because they haven't written you a check? They said, yes. That would be number two, if you're that community. And that's okay. You wait for your money before you do anything, that's okay too. All right, so only 35. See, those that haven't done this before, there's always some dropouts. All right, and you guys, now you get scared, like I'm a college. All right, let's see what the results are. All right, again, half of you, almost half think you're a well-oiled machine. All right, so number two, so 25% of the room. I know it's not a lot, but there's a few people that have voted on it that it's about the fee. So be honest, who did that? Oh, see, I told you, I've been telling you every session I'm going to call you out. No, I'm curious as to your perception of that. This is your perception of your system. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Charging fees is a good thing. You got to pay people. You got to pay your consultants. You have to charge fees. So who said charging fees is Leon? Why did you say that?
Well, the problems that we've gone through, we have a contractor doing our permitting, and we're still trying to harmonize making fees in order to pay for services. And that's an ongoing discussion in the city, but more than a few people have complained that our fees are too high.
So if a community was out there that had a system where they could solve that was compatible with the developer, where the developer said, yeah, that's cool, that's fine. Is that something you'd invite into your room and say, hey, let's learn from this, figure out how to do it? Right. So that's One Stop Ready. So for those that haven't been here, that's One Stop Ready. That's identifying a concern. Listen, we're in a tight financial spot. We can't take the risk of these people going to stiff us on the fee at the end of the day. You're not like Auburn Hills, all that money. They build football fields and stuff. You know, I'm sorry, Michelle, I'm supposed to be positive. So that's One Stop Ready. So let's go to the next one. All right. Which of the following best exemplifies how your community obtains input from the business community? You sit around a table and you collaborate. I guess it's a survey of some kind. You rely on the chamber, and who cares what the business community thinks? Again, your honest thoughts on this. Okay? This is they do it. They send a survey. The chamber does it. Okay, different organization. Doesn't have to be the chamber, but you rely on a different organization to know what your business community is thinking. All right, come on, a few more. I know you know how you talk to your business community out there, and if you don't know, then you're nobody cares. You really are. Might as well pick number 4. All right, we're getting up to about where we got. Oh, a few more. That go to the midterm. All right, so you sit down, you collaborate with your community. So in Waterford, how do you do that? What do you do in Waterford? Gary, what do you do in
Well, we
Waterford?
don't rely on our chamber, but we got an open line of communication with our chamber, and we do a lot of meetings with the chamber and existing businesses. And when we welcome in new businesses, the businesses get together. And like I said, we keep an open line of communication. It's constant. The chamber is a big part of our communication process with our businesses, existing, new, and incoming.
So you have a collaborative effort, you work closely with an outside organization, in this case the chamber, but you also host meetings where you take input from the business community. How about Wixom? How do you communicate Wixom with your business community?
We've created a Wixom Business Forum, which is kind of like our own little chamber within the city businesses, both commercial and industrial, and we have monthly meetings, and we bring in speakers that regarding hot topics, whether it's roads or whatever it may be, and
Good. Does anybody have their own form of a business roundtable? That's just distinct Oak Park does? Oak Park?
And actually, it's been a very large thing for a lot of our businesses to just come and,
Vent a little?
they just vent about stuff that happened 3-4 years ago.
So this is Emily, she's the new Economic Development Director for Oak Park. So she's not one of the communities that's going to graduate from the program, but they may be in next time. I hope they are. So when did you form this? When did you do it?
I started in January, and our first monthly meeting started in March.
All right, so what's been the impression of the results of having that business plan?
Well, again, people venting about, previous, they didn't feel like they had somebody that they could reliably call and get help navigating the maze. That was my picture, was the maze of permitting. And so, now getting the response to be calling me versus getting angry. And then I think a lot of our businesses are building community within each other, which they don't do. So, very helpful.
Question. So now I know we talked about tracking projects. This is honesty. Tom, you got a comment?
The Pontiac Downtown Business Association goes out and looks at, gets the individual, the group to come in, sit down and talk to them about the downtown area. SCORE puts on roundtables for the business owners, and it is a collaborative effort downtown. And we're actually preparing to go citywide now.
Oh, that's outstanding.
There's a new initiative bringing the two chambers, the Business Association and the Coalition, Greater Coalition of Pontiac together, meeting seminars every 4 months and meeting in between every month to try to bring all the businesses together to reach each other.
So is there a sense from everybody the importance of listening to the concern, need, desire of the business community? I mean, is there a consensus we would all agree you at least have to listen, right? Now, in our roundtable in Oakland County, every year we accept recommendations from the business community, which 82% of those we've implemented in some way. So not only are we listening on it, but we are changing the way that we do business to meet that demand and that listening. So it's very important. And so in Oak Park, you can see the result. Now the business community feels they can actually go even talk to someone. So that's great. All right, so answer this question in as realistic way as you can. So when I'm talking about tracking projects, don't think of it as, I kind of know what's going on. If you're the outside person looking at it and you don't know that Supervisor Wall is walking up to the 3rd floor to talk, how do you think projects really are perceived that they're tracked? How proactive is your tracking? Answer it that way. Is it that we're on the phone all the time making sure the entire network knows what they're doing? Is this when we're out in the field making sure it is? We just rely on some computer program. We don't know it says what it says. I don't know. Or are you Homer Simpson? Who cares? So really answer this one honestly. Do you have something in your system that really, is it that collaborative? We know everything, every step, we're talking, we're communicating. Is it kind of there? We drive by the project, we make sure it's going. We put it in the computer and forget about it. I'm just, answer honestly. Combination? Well, you can pick one and then I'll pick on you to explain.
I didn't get the high-end software. You can only pick one.
All right, I scared them off. They won't answer. So let's see what it'll work. So several of you think we're immediately responsive. We know exactly where the thing is. When that jerk developer comes in that didn't want to write us the check, we call them anyway just because we're so kind. That was number one, right? Number two is more as we have a general sense of what's happening in the field, what's happening out there, and we keep on top of things. Which it sounds like it's Gary's mechanism. I just keep on top of it. I make sure it's moving forward. So, Lauren, what was your comment? Why would two? What two and why two?
Well, there's actually three, because the first one, we're all communicating with the project people, everybody's communicating together. But we also have people out in the field that if they see something that, or they're on site or something and there's a problem, it gets reported right back to our office. And then also we have Salesforce and BSNA as our tracking.
So let me ask you
Kind of have
something.
it all.
And I know Brad flashed the one minute, but I'm late for Brooks anyway, so who cares? So when you say when you see a problem,
Right. If we
see, I think
have-
your definition of a problem is different in different communities.
Okay, well, it's an opportunity to fix something that may go wrong. You know, because we're out there, we're on the ground, and say one of our inspectors is out there and there's an issue. Okay, we're not gonna stop the project, we're not gonna do something, you know, drastic. What we're gonna do is say, we're gonna figure this out, and he's either gonna call our building official or whoever needs to get it straightened out and get it working again. That's what happens. So it doesn't, so even out in the field, they can make decisions on their own. If they're not comfortable, if it's too high of a decision that they don't feel comfortable making, then they can call back to the office and talk to our building official or Steve Holmes.
So why is it important to track projects? Yeah, why is it important to track projects?
Really strong schedule. I mean, it's a lot of times, I think if you are out in the field, things can go south on you, get over nowhere. I personally drive by the track.
And so what's the negative impact of not paying attention?
They're not gonna open on time.
Moving on time. So who gets the blame for it? You do. And what do you do when you get the blame, usually? Don, what do you usually do? You say, well, it wasn't my fault.
Go find out,
Right, yeah.
make sure that it's.
And so what do we all end up doing? Right? Well, the developer didn't do what he's supposed to do. The developer's saying, they didn't tell me I had to have that stuff in. You say, well, the plans were incomplete. The developer said, my plans were fine, I never asked you. And 3 months later, you're still in the hole, right? So why is it important to track, to have some system in place that says, all right, here's the date, here's the deadlines. You put a little trigger in the thing that says, we got to call them by the close of business today because if they don't get the plans in by tomorrow, we got to break the news to them they've blown 30 days in their deadline because the Enabling Act has that 15-day requirement, right? That's important because at the end of the project, guess who you get the blame if it all goes bad? Them. And the developer, 90% of the time, will eat crow and say, they kept calling me. I couldn't get my plans out of my engineering. You change the dynamic of the perception of your community. It doesn't mean you're approving things any quicker. It just means that you're setting a timetable and an efficiency that takes the blame away from you as a community when it all goes to heck. All right? That is so significantly important because developers will talk about your community in positive terms even when they lose projects. That's the importance of having a tracking system. Not only does it keep you efficient, if you're a manager, a supervisor, a director, it keeps your staff accountable. You got staff out in the field, you know what they're doing half the time. It keeps them accountable because now you're looking at the timeline saying, this is supposed to happen by now, why is it not happening? So it allows you to keep accountability in your staff, so it's very important. Do we have more questions? That's it? All right, good. I'm going to run and catch up to Brooks. You're in erstwhile hands. The meeting will probably go quicker and more fun without me. So we're a little light tonight. You know what I mean by light? In your communities? A little light tonight.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry. You're missing a lot of us because we had an open house, a ribbon cutting thing, and some of them have been at meetings all day. We had a transition advisory board as well, so they were unable to because of the differences in zones.
It's okay to be light, right? It is. And I'm not going to pick on you either. What I mean by light is we've got representatives of other communities that have all said they want to be in this program. So last night in Independence Township, Independence wants to be in this program. They want to be able to brand themselves as one-stop ready so they can start putting it on their stuff. getting out there and saying it. They're already adopting stuff, proving it. So last night, Independence, they approved a complete package for Magneti Marelli to build an exhaust manufacturing facility in Independence Township. They've never done that before. How fast they do it? One meeting, right there?
One meeting?
One meeting. All right? James Rosso, the president of Magneti Marelli, is bragging about them all over town today. It's even not only from that, it's circled back to me from other people, how pleased that Magneti is that they came to Oakland County a few years ago. They're expanding in Oakland County. They took a chance going out to community that's never done tax abatement, didn't have districts created anything else. They created a district, they created the resolution, they created the abatement. They all did it in one meeting. Independence wants to be in the program. I know Oregon does. That's where I came from. So I'm not picking on you. We got a great email, and I'll leave you alone. I'm thinking of extending the meeting. We got a great email after a meeting in Pontiac. At the Planning Commission, there's a project, I don't even know the project. But one of my staff people sent me an email out, copied me on the email, saying, what a fabulous job you did last night at your Planning Commission. It was a project that's a legal non-conforming use that needed to clean itself up and expand. And that would be a project that traditionally in your city would get tabled and delayed and put off. Instead, someone spoke up and said, no, we need to take the time right now. We need to figure out what the issues are. We're in the One Stop Ready program for a reason. We need to get critical and we need to figure this out. And they took the time at their meeting and they figured it out. And they figured out a way to get that project through and they approved it that night. Right? So it wasn't, I'm not impressed about the approval, no, I'm happy about the approval. I'm most impressed that the Planning Commission stopped and said, no, time out. We're not going to do the knee jerk and say, let's just punt. Maybe it'll go away someday. All right? They took on a critical, challenging thing. They figured out how to do it. They asked the critical questions. They relied on their staff. They did everything right on it. And even though their meeting went a little longer, they figured it out. So you've got communities waiting in the wings that are saying, well, we can do that. We're all that and something else. All right? So next meeting is our last Academy session. It's our last chance to get your people here so they can hear me blabbing on about this. Which is good for you because it's the last time you have to listen to it. So bring somebody new next meeting that hasn't been here. Invite them. It's kind of like the church mentality. My pastor always tells me, Matt, there'd be more people here if you just invite somebody. Somebody that's not been here from your community, a ZBA member, someone from your staff, someone from anything in your system. Get them here for that last session. And the reason it's important is our last session was going to be this session. Kind of glad it's flipped a little bit. The last session is the most critical part of One Stop Ready. It's when we hear the best practices of when jobs and companies, small, large, garages, factories come into your community. How do you run the pre-application process so that that company comes in and says, this is a rock star community? And they tell 15 friends, man, I found a rock star community. That pre-application process is your first ability to showcase your community that you're the very best at what you do. And that's where you get the most out of the benefit to your community, is in that pre-app process. So at that last meeting, last time you'll hear me flat around, bring your friends, please bring your friends. Because once we lose the ability to bring you to these meetings, we're going to be working with you, working with your staff, but we won't have that overriding thing where new people faces can come and say, well, God, all these people here listen to this? It must be worth something. And remember when I leave you with this, remember when I said, you got to sign the poster? You guys all remember I made you all sign the poster? Huh? What did I say in your meetings while I was making you sign that poster? Because you got curmudgeons in your communities that don't give one holy heck about anything we're talking about. Right? I didn't have to do it on it, but it stood up and signed the poster. But remember I said you've got people that are good intentions and they want your community to be strong and vibrant, but this stuff is all gobbledygook and they don't care. And we made them sign a poster. Why did we make them sign a poster? Because at some point I want you to be empowered to say, you know what? I learned a few things or two. I'm not going to let you do that. That's what happened in Pontiac the other night when they said, no, time out. We're not going to let this happen. We're not going to do our old school of pump. We're going to fix it right now. So, meeting's yours. Brooks is going to yell at me. I'll see you.
Yeah,
all right?
thanks.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Matt doesn't know that I haven't got those posters out to all you guys yet, so you can sign it right away. Our speaker tonight is Rod Arroyo. Rod is the president of Clear Zoning, an Oakland County company, and you have many Oakland County clients and have had many over the years. And He's going to talk about best practices, and he has a number of examples from the county and from other places. Ron? Thanks.
Brad, question. Depending on how Rod wants to handle this, can you want to entertain questions throughout, or you want to kind of get through your body of work, and then we do have time at the end for Q&A.
Yeah, I think there'll be plenty of time at the end. I'll tell you, if someone has a pressing question, they can certainly present it, but I prefer maybe hold them to the end, and I might break halfway through and offer an opportunity as well. So let's see how it goes. I do want to have this as an opportunity to have something of an open conversation, particularly once we get through the presentation, share some ideas. This is all about learning, sharing ideas. It's a pleasure to be in front of you. I see a lot of familiar faces, and what I'm really happy about is that the best practices that we're going to be talking about, the vast majority of them feature Oakland County communities. Show you what some Oakland County communities are doing really well in terms of the specific topic areas. I've been asked by Brett to address these topic areas here, which is internet accessibility, the permitting process, project trafficking, and business input self-evaluation. So that's our outline for this evening. So we're going to start off with internet accessibility. Quite frankly, all the documents and references that your community has that is related to development, permitting, or processing need to be on your website. If they're not, you're making it difficult to do the business that you need to do. And as Matt mentioned, if someone's out of town in particular, or from another country and they're looking to do business in your community, they need to be able to find that, and they need to be able to find it on their own time zone. They may not be doing business when you're doing business, and you want to be able to make that available. So that includes resources such as your community plans, your master plans, downtown development plans, your various policies that might be appropriate, handouts that relate to the development process. Development incentives. Do you offer development incentives such as abatements or density bonuses or something special, reduce setbacks under certain situations? Do you describe that, and do you make that available online? Your zoning ordinance. There's absolutely no excuse not to have your zoning ordinance online. There's a number of different methodologies. The most very basic, which you could do if you have a paper copy, is you can scan it with OCR recognition and get it up, and at least it's online. It's simple, but it's there. People can access it. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a little more detail. And then applications and fee schedules. Why not have your application forms, your fee schedules, all of that available? So that's certainly a critical component to sharing. And Bloomfield Township was mentioned early on. I think they're a great example of a community that is presenting that information. This happens to be a screenshot from their website. And you can see here under the Planning, Building, and Ordinance Department, there's hyperlinks to a number of different documents, and that includes, they have an annual report, they have approved commercial development, they have their clear zoning ordinance, they have the their design review board, doing business in Bloomfield, basically a brochure. If you're interested in doing business there, here's helpful information for you. Their fee schedule, forms, master plan, ordinances, information about the Planning Commission, their tree preservation ordinance, zoning board of appeals, zoning map. All of that is available with one click. So if I'm interested in doing business in Bloomfield, I'm going to be able to go to that website, and I'm going to be able to quickly start accessing the information. Now, in terms of online codes, there's a lot of different ways. I talked about that briefly. Certainly, there are code companies that offer a service. Many of you use them. You might use Unicode or American Legal. They all offer the ability to basically codify your code, have it available online. It's searchable. You know, there's pluses and minuses to using services like that. The best news of all is that it's online and it's available. So that's what you want. You want to get it online. You can search it. They've made some improvements in recent years towards incorporating graphics. It used to be if you went online to one of those services and there was a graphic in your ordinance, you actually had to click on a separate link and it would open up this horrible looking file that you might be able to see and maybe you would not, or maybe your pop-up blocker would block it and you'd never see it, and people would get lost and they'd say, I can't find this, and they get frustrated. But there are some enhancements to that. It's improving. Others are also using PDFs, portable document format, as a way to put ordinances online, and that offers a lot of flexibility. And we're going to talk about some of those examples as we go through this presentation. One of the first ones I want to show you is Lathrop Village. Lathrop Village is an Oakland County community that has their ordinance online. They're using the clear zoning format. Other communities that use this format include Farmington Hills, Bloomfield, West Bloomfield, White Lake. Nobody's in the process of converting to this. Essentially what this does is it presents the document in a hyperlinked PDF format. Instead of having 20, 30, or 40 different articles, it's all boiled down into 7 basic consistent articles that make some sense. Purpose and introduction, definitions, zoning districts, use standards related to uses, site standards related to developing the site, development procedures, and then administration, appeals, and enforcement. And then wherever you see blue text, it's actually hyperlinked. So once you click on anything that's shown in blue, it's going to take you to the section that corresponds with that particular piece of information. Now, one of the most common questions that you see if you're working in the counter in a planning or building department is people are going to come and say you're a small business or you're interested in starting a small business, where can I build whatever? I want to open a coffee shop. Where in this community can I open a coffee shop? Well, getting the answer to that question, although it's a simple question, might be extremely complex. If you allow coffee shops in 5 different zoning districts, and you don't happen to know by memory that it's in all of those districts, then what does it require you to do? You have to thumb through all the districts looking to see, do we allow coffee shops in these districts? A better way is to have a use matrix. A use matrix can be incorporated as part of the zoning code, or it might be just part of a site plan manual that you hand out as a way to make your ordinance more user-friendly. This answers the basic question. So if I want to do an outdoor cafe, I can look here and see it's a permitted use in 4 different districts. I can go up there, look at the districts, go right to the information, find out what the requirements are for that district. The use matrix makes a lot of sense because particularly if you're the small business that is working all day long, you finally get a breath of fresh air at 10 o'clock at night and you want to get this question answered, you can go online and get the answer yourself. And then if you have more detailed information needs, you can then call staff. The other nice thing about this is you get governmental efficiency because now staff's not necessarily fielding some of these basic zoning questions, they're fielding those that have more depth and complexity to them. So you may have more time to be doing other projects like economic development or plan review or getting ready for a meeting. And some of these other basic questions can just be answered the way they should be in a way that's simple and doesn't necessarily involve using staff time. So this is another page that describes how to use Lathrop Village's zoning code. So if you're going to use a format that's not what every community uses, if there's something unique about it, you want to have a way to explain that. So something like this to describe how your code is organized. If you have certain buttons at the bottom, like here, there's a little map icon. If you click that, it'll take you to the zoning map. A home button will take you back to the table of contents. If you have certain elements that you use consistently, go ahead and include that in a guide to your code so that it makes sense to the user. And you can see a lot of the blue text in here, and it's described here that if you see blue text, that means it's hyperlinked, so you can actually get to the individual section. And then you'll see that on the sides of each page are the 7 tabs that are connected to those 7 articles. The basic article organization connects with that. So that's one way of providing that information. So if you go to a community and you want to look at that in more detail, let's say you go to Farmington Hills, you open up their ordinance, this is their RA1 district, you can see in detail the information, and you've already looked at the how do I use this ordinance, so you know what these icons mean. You know that these selected references are sections that might be important to know if you're developing in this district, so you can hyperlink and click onto those and get that information quickly. And then here's all your principal permitted uses, your special approval uses, accessory uses, and then all the information you need for setbacks, height. So instead of jumping around all over your ordinance to try to find these answers to these questions, you basically, in a 2-page spread, you have a snapshot of what, in fact, you need to the basic knowledge, at least, to develop within that particular district. Now, we'll see how well this comes up. Sometimes this takes a little bit of time. One of the things, for example, that Farmington Hills has done is, in order to kind of explain the process a little better about how their zoning ordinance works, is they've created a video. And the video walks you through in about 8 minutes. And I don't think it's going to come up this way, so I'm probably going to have to hyperlink it. Let's see what happens. Is it going to work? Okay, great. So what you end up with is you end up with a video of tips on how to work with Farmington Hills' zoning code. And so what it's going to do is it's actually going to start to describe how to set up your own Adobe Acrobat on your computer so that you have the
zoning. Today we're working with
listen to it for
Farmington
this
Hills' zoning ordinance. Before we start the actual demonstration, we're going to go over a few helpful tools that you may want to add to your toolbar in Adobe Acrobat. This may look a little bit different depending on the version. If you're working with Adobe Acrobat Reader, or if you're working with Adobe Acrobat Professional, but all of them should have a toolbar. You should be able to click, and there should be an option for more tools, so you can click on that. We'll let you add various tools to your toolbar that would be helpful. Starting with, if we scroll down here to the File toolbar, you want to make sure that's highlighted with the green mark, and you want these checks to be highlighted for Open, Print, and Save. You'd like to have the Find toolbar highlighted. That allows you to do word search. I recommend the one full page as well as the 2-up continuous. The 2-up continuous is helpful for looking at the zoning districts with a 2-page spread. Also, these previous view and next view, you do want these highlighted, the back buttons and the forward buttons. You also want to have the select tool, the hand tool, and the marquee zoom tool highlighted. That'd be very helpful as well. So let's click OK. We have these up here. For example, with the Find tool, you may just want to find out everything you need to know in this ordinance about fences. You can type in the word fences and hit enter, and it's going to go through and highlight in blue. You just go next everywhere in the ordinance where the word fences appears. So you'll find it. Once again, here you go, and it'll just keep repeating that throughout the process. So that's one option just for word searching. And remember, I mentioned the back button. We can now click back here, and it'll take us back to the home page where we were, the cover page. So let's scroll back down here to the table of contents. We're going to go to the one-page view. With all clear zoning codes, it's broken into 7 basic articles: purpose and introduction, definitions, zoning districts, use standards, site standards, development procedures, and administration appeals and enforcement. And because this text is blue, we know that it's hyperlinked. So make sure our hand is highlighted. We can click here to go to a detailed table of contents, or we can go to the how to use this ordinance, which is a helpful 1-page summary with some additional supplemental pages that show key features of how to use a clear zoning code. We talked about the 2-page spread for an individual zoning district. This particular how to use this ordinance page shows you what certain symbols and certain indications are on this particular page and what they really mean. We see our 7 key tabs that are on the side that help you to highlight. You can see because the number 3 zoning district tab is in red, you know you're in that particular section. The bottom of every page has these 3 buttons. The I button is the information button, gets you back to this page, how to use this ordinance. The home is the home key, takes you back to the table of contents, and then the little map symbol takes you to the zoning map. Okay, let's continue to scroll down. Another couple of symbols you may want to make sure you're aware of. The book symbol gives you an indication that the term is defined in the definition section of the ordinance. And the hand with the quill shows that there's a graphic that illustrates a particular standard definition or a requirement. So that's another key tool or key symbol to look for within the code. And then I mentioned, look for these buttons. We can go right to the zoning map if we want to. Here's the zoning map. We can hit the zoom tool, zoom in a little bit closer. Go back to our hand tool if we're interested in learning about the B1 district. We click on the B1 district legend, brings us right to the B1 district standards. We can do the 2-up view, get the 2-page spread for B1. We have principal permitted uses, special approval uses, and accessory uses. And then on the right side, we'll have the development standards, including setback requirements, building height, and then some selected references. If we go up here to our zoom tool, look a little closer over here, we can see our setback information highlighted. Building height in this district's 25 feet, but you may not have this style of roof. So you can click on how do I calculate height. It'll take you back to the definition section, and then we can take a closer look at building height, how it's defined, and how you measure depending upon the type of roof that you have with the development that you're looking at. So that's another helpful tool. You can see these zoning definitions are illustrated. At the beginning of the zoning definitions, we have all of them listed, and so if you want to find the definition of lot, you click on, and lot information is all on this particular page. Let's go back. Let's go back to the how to use this ordinance page. We're going to go into the full page view, scroll down, because I also want to show you in the how to use this ordinance section, we have a use matrix. Very helpful tool. So for example, let's say that you are interested, we're going to click on the hand up here, if you're interested in developing a, or operating an assembly hall. And assembly halls right here is a listed use. You can go across and see that it's a permitted use in the B2 district. If you click on B2, that's going to take you right to the B2 district standards. You can hit the 2-page view. You can see a lot of key information for the B2 district that is important. If we want to zoom in, we can zoom down here to selected references. And for example, if I wanted to get information on off-street parking requirements, I can click on that. That's now going to take me right to the off-street parking section and all the information I need about what spaces are required for various uses. I can get that right in this section. Find out about drive-through facilities, look at parking layout requirements. All that information is right here at my fingertips. Now if I want to go take a look at tab 4, that's use standards. This describes standards that are associated with particular uses. So if I was to build a gas station, gasoline station standards are right here. I can then look right at gasoline service stations. I can see, because there's a book symbol next to that, that that's a defined term. So I can then click on definitions, scroll down, find gasoline service station, click on that, and then here I have the definition of gasoline service station. All very easy to find. Let's go to site standards. That's tab 5. This is where we find a lot of key information associated with developing property. For example, off-street parking requirements, loading requirements, signs, flood control zones, corner clearance. If we want corner clearance, we click on that. We have a nice illustration that describes how corner clearance is regulated within the community. Development procedures is tab 6. Find out information about site plan review, special land use requirements, all found in this section. And then finally, administration, appeals, and enforcement provides you with information if you need to appeal, or if there's questions about how this ordinance is enforced. Those can be answered in this section. So we hope this has been helpful to you in learning about the Clear Zoning Code. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact the City of Farmington Hills Planning Department.
Okay, so that is, okay, so that's an example of, I need to get out of that and get back to where I was. Perfect. Okay, oops. Okay, so what we're going to do is, let's take a look at Bloomfield's again, because one of the things they have in their how to use this ordinance is helpful links. We talked about how important that is. They have a link right to the planning division forms. So if you click on planning division forms, you'll be able to pull up the site plan forms, and those site plan forms are fillable. You can make them fillable online so that, I don't know how many of you review site plans. If you ever looked at an application that's filled out by hand by an architect or an engineer and try to read it, it can be challenging. And it's nice if it's all fillable, because that way it's going to be typed in. It's going to be clean, printed out. You're going to be able to process it. You're asking for all the right information, and then if it has to be fixed, it's easier to be fixed. So that's certainly a great tool in order to make everybody's life a little bit easier as they go through the development review process. Let's talk about some benchmarks related to permitting. We certainly want to create an efficient process and an effective process. One of the ways you do that is you train your staff and you train officials as it relates to the process. How many of you, if someone comes to the Planning Commission new, you have a new appointee to the Planning Commission, how many of you have them go through a training process? Only a few. Okay. A lot of people who serve on a planning commission don't know a whole lot about development. They don't really know a lot about the roles and responsibilities of planning commissioners. One of the things you can do is, at a minimum, have a packet that you hand out that has maybe some simple explanations of the basic roles and responsibilities of a planning commission, as well as what the process is like within that community to get from A to B. How do you get approved? How do you appeal if you need to appeal? Basic questions and answers. So I highly recommend that. Also, new staff coming on board needs the same thing. When you hire a new staff planner or a new administrative professional that's working in the building department or the planning department, they obviously need training, but they need to understand the process. People in the building department should know how the site plan process works. People in the planning department should know the basic concepts of how to do the building permit process. You want to cross-train your staff so that they have basic knowledge and they can field basic questions. You want to raise awareness of the process with the development community. You can do that obviously by using your website, business forums, we heard, regular meetings. You can use social media. Maybe you come up with a one-page how to get a fence permit, or how to, what you need to know for a residential pool. If you come up with a one-page description of that, you can make that available online, and then maybe you post it to your website, or post it to your Facebook page, or you tweet it, or you find some ways to start getting some of that information out into the community. Allow opportunities to accelerate the process in order to help applicants meet deadlines. We heard some discussion about that earlier tonight. Someone comes to you and says, I have a new order for making this widget. In order for me to get this contract, I have to be up and running so I can deliver this product to this supplier within a certain amount of time. I have to get in the ground by this date. That doesn't maybe necessarily follow with your normal process. So how do you handle that? Well, there's a number of different ways. My recommendation to you is that you think about a formal process and come up with a framework rather than trying to address it on a case-by-case basis. The downside to just doing it on a case-by-case basis is if you do it for one and then the next one comes and wants the same thing and you say no, you may have a problem. So there's a number of different ways to potentially look at this. One, you may say, okay, we're going to do it on a fee-based situation. So this is our normal site plan review fee. If you're willing to pay whatever that percent over and above that fee is, we will process you within X number of days. That's one approach. Another may be to target certain districts. Maybe you have certain redevelopment districts that are important within your community. If someone's going to come and do a project there, you're going to get them through the process quicker. Or maybe it's a land use. Maybe there's certain land uses that are ones you're trying to target for economic development. You have to be careful. You need to discuss this. This is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Every community has to come up with a policy that makes sense for that community, and you need to think about what the process is. But The thing you want to be able to do, though, is say, we're treating everybody the same because we're following a procedure. So try to think about how you might apply that in your community, how you might help somebody who has a tight deadline get through as fast as possible, because that's what you want to do. Make the application submittal easier. We talked about online. Credit card payment option. How many of you allow someone submitting a site plan to pay the fees with a credit card? We've got just a couple. Why not? Think about how many small businesses were built on the financing of a credit card. Thousands of them. So if I'm a business owner and I have a coffee shop and I want to bump it out 500 or 1,000 square feet and I'm tight, I think I can pull this off, but I'm not really sure, I'd like to use my credit card to do that. Why not allow them to do that? And now with technology and some of the things that are available, now this is just one example, there are others, but Square is a great company founded by the founder of Twitter. Essentially, it's the thing I like about it is there's no monthly fee, there's no commitment. And in fact, the little dongle you stick into your smartphone to swipe the card is free. So what you pay is 2.75% for every transaction, and that money is in your municipality's checking account in 2 days. 2.75% flat fee to swipe. Build that cost into your fee process, and everybody who comes, why not allow them to build miles? What's wrong with that? Question, Michelle.
Well, what about for those communities? Cities can do this, but I understand townships can't. So.
Well, there may, I think you'd have to talk to your township attorney about exactly how that. I think you're correct. I've heard that as well. It sounds like we need to change the law to make that happen, because it's one of those common sense things. So that may be something you want to take up with your state representative and see what it takes to get that modified. But I would talk, certainly anytime you're changing your financing options, you need to clear that through your municipal attorney and through staff. But why not do it? And if you can't do it, let's all work together to find a solution. Maybe you contact the Michigan Township Association and get them on board and make it happen. But this is something that's really low cost. The nice thing is, if you're in a community that doesn't have a lot of development activity, and you go 5 months without any major site plans, you don't have any cost to offer this. Okay, there's no ongoing cost.
Right. PayGov now has the fee to the charge, so there's no charge for them.
Okay.
The user that pays the fee.
Yeah, in some instances, the user can pay the fee. I've also heard some attorneys say that there could be some issues with upcharging a credit card processing fee over and above. So that's another thing you want to check and make sure that everybody's comfortable with that. You've got
credit card companies have different policies, and basically whether you can charge a fee or not, how it goes on. So you really need to verify, make sure that it's legal on top.
Verify, make sure it's legal. But if you run into a roadblock, see what you can do to eliminate that roadblock, because this is really one way to improve customer service. And I think 5 years from now, we're not going to be talking about this. I think everyone's going to be doing it just because it makes sense. All right, permitting process. Describe the review process in the zoning ordinance. Well, there's two components to this, and here we see how it's described in the ordinance, but also do it with a flow chart. And the flow chart doesn't necessarily have to be in the zoning ordinance. You could actually have that in a separate development manual that describes, but people are visual. They appreciate understanding the visual component. In this way, it's color-coded. This is the pre-application process. So if you're going through a pre-application conference, this is the process here. This is the internal staff review with the different departments. And then this is the actual review at the planning commission level, and then the ultimate approval. So it's color-coded, it makes sense. It's something that I think most people, when they look at it, will help. It's going to help them to understand your process more than just reading these words is going to help them do that. A development coordinator. Municipalities should have a development coordinator who's trained and responsible to intake plans, rezoning requests, and other requests for development approval. This can be someone who is an administrative professional who has a great way of coming across and is business friendly and knows the site plan and the development process inside and out. It might be someone with a more technical planning background. It can be someone maybe who comes from a building department background. A variety of backgrounds can fill this type of position depending on the level of sophistication and what their role is. But at a minimum, they need to be somebody that has a friendly and welcoming face, and someone who's ready to take a project, welcome somebody, and say, look, we're here to help you get approved, and we're here to answer your questions, and this is what you need to do. And they can provide them with the information and walk them through the process. And they can be that person that they call if there's a question. So, okay, I've come in, I've submitted my plans, it's 5 days later, and I'm thinking, boy, I don't know, was I supposed to submit a landscape plan with that site plan? You need a contact person that you can rely on, so that they're not just calling around City Hall or Township Hall trying to figure this out. These people can also facilitate meetings too. They can say, okay, when am I going to be on the Planning Commission? Well, this person should be able to say, well, if you submitted your information by this date, you're going to be on this meeting, and be able to communicate that and get those answers to that person as quick as possible. We have some examples here. Once again, this is Bloomfield Township. They have a development coordinator. That person's identified. You can see their picture. You should have the phone number and email for that person, so that if you've got a question, there is no question. You know where to go to. You've gone on the website. I need to call Robin to get the answer to my question. And you go and you call Robin when business opens, and you get that information. So it's all about having somebody identified, making that available, and with the ease of changing information on your website, you should have that information, because if that person happens to leave and you replace them, it's easy to get onto the website or have your webmaster make that change. You should be regularly updating your website to include that as well. And then, of course, we talked a little bit about how everything doesn't go into a zoning ordinance. A how-to manual is certainly a helpful tool to help people get through the process. Maybe you would call it a development manual. Yes. You might call it a site plan manual. You want to include certain things such as contact information, meeting dates, flow charts, timelines, fee schedules, design guidelines if you have them, pre-application meeting information. All of that can be in that document, and that document should be online, so that people have the ability to get the answers to those questions. They can download it, make it so you can download it as a PDF and print it. Maybe you don't want to be on the computer all the time, you want to print it out. That way you can print it out, you can have it with you. Or maybe you just want to have it on an iPad. If you have it as a PDF, they can open it on an iPad, they can carry it with them. In fact, many communities, I know Novi just did this, they now have gone to using iPads for their planning commissioners. When you every planning commission meeting, they get an updated iPad. It's there with them. They've got all the review letters, all the packet materials there, and then all the plans are on their iPad. And they can go through. It's green. You know, you're not wasting all this paper. It's searchable. You can find that information. That might be something to think about too, in terms of trying to get information available quickly in a process that doesn't kill a lot of trees. Novi has had a site plan and development manual for many, many years. In fact, we originally developed this for them, and that staff has kind of taken it and also improved it and enhanced it over the years. One of the things I like about it is that it does what I think a lot of manuals should do. It basically poses questions and answers them. So, you know, commonly asked questions. It provides you with an introduction. It talks about the certain elements that should be on a site plan, and it points them out. Little bubble call-outs. This is all good information that I think is helpful, particularly people that aren't that familiar with the process. It has flow charts, and it has other information, and they require pre-application meetings. So if you are going to submit in that particular community, you have to have a pre-application meeting. And that pre-application meeting is done at no charge. And it provides an opportunity for you to get a lot of information up front before you do the formal submittal. So hopefully you're going to get through the approval process much faster than you would if you did not have that. This is an example of a development manual that we're working with the City of Wixom on. The City of Wixom is in the process of going through an economic development strategy. They're doing a market analysis, they're doing a branding analysis, and we're also working with them to take their development-related information, put it into a manual, have those online forms that will be available for people to use. And this is a sample of some of the information that's in there. So it's laid out so that you can access the information. It has the tabs that you can click on. It'll all be hyperlinked. It answers basic questions. When is a site plan required? What is the site plan review process? Who do I contact? And it has key people to contact, has phone numbers, it has email addresses, and it answers the question, what is the information that's required? There's checklists there that you check off to make sure you've got that information. And there's specific handouts that are related to questions that people typically ask. So for example, if you're going to the building department and you want to build a residential deck, you'll have a simple handout that will walk you through that process. Instead of handing them the building code and saying, here, read this, and you'll know what to do. And by the way, you need to read the zoning ordinance too, so you know what the setbacks are. No, you hand them this, and it tells them all the basic information. It walks them through the process. It gives them a number, somebody to call. This is all ways of being friendly, being upfront, being transparent with the information. This is from the City of Lathrop Village for the special land use process. There's nothing fancy about it, but it describes the process. It says what's going to happen. It says where you're going to go, when the public hearing is going to be held, the planning commission is going to act on it. It's ultimately going to go to City Council. It's straightforward, but it takes you through the 7 steps to get approval. And then these are some examples from different communities of flow charts that describe the exact process that we're talking about in terms of getting from A to B. And here's another one. Okay, let's talk a little bit about project tracking. There was some discussion about that earlier. Project tracking is critical to not only transparency, but accountability. And there's different ways you can do that. At a minimum, I think you should be tracking things internally. What would be even better is if that is available externally to the development community so that someone could actually go online. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But at a minimum, if it's internal, you know who's responsible for preparing the reviews, what the deadlines are, and where they stand. You can also use that when someone says, well, I just talked, you have a council member comes to you and say, I just talked to a developer and she told me that it took me 3 months to get through the development review process, and that's typical. Well, if you're tracking your reviews and you've got the actual time it takes to get through the process for every project and you're averaging it out and you've got reportable data, you can then say, no, as a matter of fact, the average site plan gets through the process in 15 days, not 2 months, not 3 months. And you can have the information to support that. Here's a couple of communities that do it online. You can actually either type in your plan number or your permit number and search, and it will tell you where you are in the plan review process. This is pretty sophisticated. I don't know of any communities locally that are at this level. Is anybody doing this? Online tracking? Yeah, this is a, I'm sorry? Yeah, to the outside, yeah. So if I'm a developer, I'm sitting at home and I want to find out where my plan is in the review process, I punch in the site plan review number. This is something to think about, but it's also something that's fairly sophisticated and requires updating on a regular basis. This is an example of what Novi does. I've actually been working with them as a consultant since 1986. It's only about 5 years old when I was hired in. But what they do is they do something very simple. They use a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. They color code it. They've got the information here where you know who the project manager is, you know the site plan number, you know the type of development, you know the type of plan it is, when it walked in the door, when the letters are due, and then all this keeps going on. It's planning, engineering, traffic, fire, all the different review entities, where they are in the process, and you know when their letters were submitted, when they were due, and then they actually go through. It doesn't show on this particular, on this slide it does. This is where they're tracking the number of days it takes to get through the process. So in 2012, 2013, average number of days, 9.3, 7 days, 9.2, 9.95, 10.2. That's how many days it's taking to get your review letters completed and then preparing you to go to Planning Commission for action. So this is a way of having accountability. Expiring plans. Particularly in the last few years, we've all probably had this come up a lot. Somebody came in the door right when the economy was booming, was about to go south. They had a plan approved. Your site plan approval may only be good for a year, maybe it's good for 2 years. What happens? Do you just let it expire? Or do you do something proactively to let them know? How many of you actually have a process in place where you let the applicant know that a plan is about to expire? Just a few. Okay. Something you might want to think about, because sometimes you're dealing with small businesses, sometimes you're dealing with sophisticated developers, they still lose track of these things. It's pretty easy with calendar tracking. You could even go on and use a Google Calendar and put in the expiration date of a plan in Google Calendar and set it to give you a 30 or a 60-day advance notice of that date, just like you would a birthday or an anniversary, and it'll pop up and they'll send you an email, and then you get that email, oh, this plan's expiring. Let me send the applicant an email and let them know their plan's about to expire, and let them know in enough time so that they actually can go and request an extension before it actually expires. So think about what it would take if somebody walked in the door and had an expiring plan, and what would happen. So I think that's certainly something a lot of communities don't do and could be doing to be more business friendly and to let them know it's really a customer service approach that developers will appreciate. And it's all about that word. Once they get that impression that you're business friendly and that you want quality development and you want people, and you want, as a developer, if I feel like I'm welcome, I may go to your community rather than the one next door where I know I'm not going to get that same level of treatment. And if you tell them in the pre-application conference, by the way, if your plan's about to expire, we're going to send you an email or give you a phone call and let you know, they're going to say, oh wow, that's great, thanks. I really, those are little things that are business related that I think will be appreciated by the development community. Business input and self-evaluation. Okay, why is this important? Well, it's important to take a look at what's happening within your own process and get input from the business and the development community so that you can react to that, you can listen and make changes and tweaks that may be necessary to enhance your process. Periodic self-assessments can illustrate what's working well and what really needs working. You may want to use a number of different techniques. You can send out online surveys, it's very low cost. You can do specific interviews, one-on-one. You might do focus groups. You might do roundtable discussions. This is an example. I mentioned Wixom earlier. We're going through this economic development strategy. We sat down with the staff there and went through basically an internal evaluation of the site plan review process, talking about how it's working now, how they would like to see it change to make it even better. Wixom has a pretty good reputation in the development community of processing plans in a reasonable amount of time, but they want to do better than that. So they're looking at that process, getting that information, tracking that, and all that's being incorporated into their new development manual. Another thing that they've done is reached out to the development community and asked them, how are we doing? What's working? What's not working? They did an online survey, got responses back, suggestions. Also, an internal survey was done. All the people within the community, the staff, it doesn't matter what department you're in, they were asked, what do you know about the site plan process? Can you describe the site plan process if somebody comes to your counter? Do you know where zoning ordinance information can be found? Those types of questions were asked too. You get those types of response back, and you start to see, well, maybe we can do some additional training here, or maybe we can make some additional information, put some additional information on our website, or do some department cross-training so that one department can answer the question that maybe previously only one department could answer. Also consider a survey of businesses in the community to understand if businesses are planning to grow. Right now, we're at a really great time to do that. We haven't had a lot of activity up until maybe a year or two ago. Things are starting to tick back up. Things are getting better. We're starting to see construction. We're starting to see housing. We're seeing new development. We're seeing expansions. And that's just going to keep going like this. So this is a great time to reach out and find out if your businesses are expecting growth. What can you do to start gearing up for that? You may find that if you're really busy now, if your staff is barely getting the plans approved, and you do a survey and you've got 20% of the businesses in your community are expecting to expand, you may need to start thinking about staffing up or changing the way you do business so that you can be ready to take that on. So you can assess that, also assess your fee structure to make sure that that's working, and make sure it's truly covering the true cost of doing business in your community. And then another thing to do is to consider a post-review survey. Do any of you, after someone goes through the development review process, they get a site plan approved, you send out a survey and ask them how it went? Very few people do that. Almost no one does it. But if you go to a store, or you buy something online, you go to Amazon, you buy something online, you go to the store, chances are you're going to get a survey, right? How'd we do? How'd you like the product? I think local government needs to start thinking like private business does and run that way. Because if we get that feedback, we can learn from that. And it's really, that's what it's all about, learning new information, having that information available, discussing it, and then tweaking your process to make it work better. Questions? Yes.
I have a couple questions. Say that you have had your first meeting and you are you have the developer and the city planning department, and they're working on the site. Can they all be on the at one time? Like, can you give them a password and say you're going to make any corrections to the site plan? Do it here, and we can work it out between us.
Okay, so
follow me on that.
Well, let me make sure I understand. So someone submitted a plan, and they've decided they need to make some changes to that plan. Can you have a process where it's actually online and they could then update the plan?
Right.
It's up to you. Certainly, the risk you run is that if you've started the review process and there are people that are partway through their reviews, then you have to decide, are you going to allow somebody to do that without an additional fee? Or are you going to just tell everybody to stop, we've got changes, we need to go back to, here are the changes, you need to change your reviews. Because you may have someone, you know, I know what it's like when you work with different municipal departments. If you have 5 departments reviewing the plans, you're going to get one department, they're going to give you a letter back in 2 or 3 days. The other one's going to take maybe 10 days or maybe 2 weeks, depending on how busy they are. So someone may have already completed their plan review. They're going to have to go back and re-review it. The answer to the question is yes, you can do it, but you're going to have to make sure you're covering the bases and that you've got notification going and that everyone then has to kind of restart or either reincorporate that new information. But I don't see why you couldn't do it if you, particularly if this was a project, okay, let's say they need the fast track. They've asked for the fast track. Maybe that's something you build into your fast track system, that if something happens and you all of a sudden have to make a change, we're going to work with you and we're going to try to allow you to do that. A lot of the question then becomes too, are you getting digital submissions of site plans and development plans? Are you allowing them or are you requiring them to submit that information digitally so that it can be reviewed, it can be printed out, or do you do like a combination, or is it just a paper copy? Because if it's a paper copy, they're going to have to print out all those paper copies and get those distributed to everyone. So it's going to be different for every community, but we certainly can do
Yeah, because I was thinking that everybody would be on the same page and they could write notes to it and you can move it forward that way.
It's possible.
And what about, say if I'm a developer and I call in and I want to do a drive-through coffee shop, could I have the development coordinator send me like a file or the information up front instead of me having to go look for it all?
Absolutely. If you have a development coordinator and someone calls and says, you know, I'm not really that comfortable going online and finding all this, that person ought to be able to just grab all that stuff in an electronic file and email it to them so they have everything they need. And they should be trained to be able to do that. They should know exactly which forms, which manuals, which flow charts, which fee schedules to send so that all of that's available. Any other questions? Yes, Brett.
Ron, in the communities that are using their zoning, does the person working the counter use that interactive PDF when people come in, or do they put through a book? Or
It depends on the community. Most of them trying to have it right there at the counter. In fact, it's hopeful that we can actually get some to work it into a kiosk so it's just there, so you can come up and actually start searching for information on your own, because that really would be preferable. And I think what's going to happen, it probably hasn't happened because the development activity has been a little slow in most communities. I think as staff becomes more busy, because you're all going to get busier, things are getting better, and everyone's going to be even more busy than you are now. These types of time-saving factors, like having your ordinance online at the counter, so if someone does come there, they can start to search out their own answers to questions. I think it's going to be helpful. Yes?
I probably missed this, so I apologize on asking a stupid question.
No, there are no stupid questions.
Well, Rod at ClearZoning.com. So how do you define what is ClearZoning? It sure sounds great. I'm not sure how practical it is, but I love the idea. So I don't know what the idea is.
Yeah, we showed you an example, the Lathrop Village example, Farmington Hills. There's a few communities. It's something that we do. There are other online ways to present the ordinance. It's not the only one. It's just one example, and we showed you some of the other ones as well. But it's a format that we developed, that we've worked with some of the communities that are clients to make their ordinance easy to access. There's certainly other ones that are out there too, but it's one way of making your ordinance more friendly.
You didn't really define that particularly clear, but I suppose.
Well, it's basically a product.
It's a way to format your zoning ordinance so that the lay public can easily get at it and not have to know that they have to go through 5 different sections to get the information they need for one topic.
So it doesn't mean a municipality necessarily has no zoning.
No.
And they go to the planning commission and they request this use and planning commission.
It takes your existing zoning ordinance and reformats it so that you can use it easily. You can use it online.
In its simplest format, and what we typically do is you maintain the regulatory effect, so your ordinance does not change. Everything that's regulated now continues to be regulated exactly the same way. All of that's there. It's just put in a totally different format so that you can get the answers to the questions. It's user friendly, but it's the slogan is it's your code only better. Basically, the language and the regulation that's important to you, that your community has developed over the years, is exactly the same. That doesn't change. It's just the way you present it, the way you navigate it, that's changing. Any other questions? Yeah.
To go back to where you started,
yes.
The person that wants to do the coffee shop. So can they then find the district and then go to the map that says exactly where they can do that?
Okay.
Or do they have to kind of go through, because I think people are thinking, geez, I've got this concept and I want to do it at, Livernois and John R.
Mm-hmm.
Is that district? Is it that transparent? Whether it's ClearZoning or some other online system?
There's 2 ways to go about that. One is if you were to look at the zoning map like we showed you, you would then see that your property at Livernois and wherever is zone B2. You would then go to the legend, click on B2, it would take you right to the B2 regulations. Now, the next step in the process, and I think it's coming soon, will be that you have the map to the point where you click on the parcel and it actually opens the zoning code information right for that parcel. Not there yet, but we're working on it. Any other questions?
Let's give Rod a good round of applause.